I made two previous videos about this dress, one where I made a petticoat and one where I made the rest of the skirt. And now it's time to make the top, the Berta and the butterflies. I'm not gonna lie, the top was very difficult to make as it is so well fitted. So I started by putting on a white top. The top has to be disposable. And I put duct tape all over it. As I'm not that flexible, I needed some help with the back and also with the final cutting. Then you basically have a sculpture of yourself, be your own muse, like they say. I took some more duct tape and I added this to the front and the back of my creation. This is to recreate the V shape that the top has. This is what my first mock-up / pattern looks like. Now it's time to cut it into pieces. Then I cut my duct tape mock-up into 9 pieces. I try to resemble them as close as possible to the actual top. Then I use these pieces to make my first pattern. I say first because there are many mock-ups to come. Then I used this pattern to create my first mock-up. I also added lines from 5 centimeters or 2 inches to the sides. These are for the boning, but that is many mock-ups to come. But just note that I add these to every mock-up. I finished the first mock-up. This is what it looks like. It's okay, but it's not near perfect. So I marked a few adjustments that I wanted to make. And then I cut a second pattern and I made a second mock-up. Then I fitted the mock-up and I repeated the same process. I deconstructed it and then I used the adjustments that I made to create a new pattern. And I will use that pattern to create the underlayer of the final top, what means that I can finally use the boning channels that I've been adding to every single one in hope that I could finally use them.
Bone! What happens in my bedroom, detective, is none of your business. Bone!
So the function of the extra 5 centimeters that I added to every pattern piece is that they have a lot of fabric left over on the inside, and I'm going to turn this into boning channels. I marked the size of the channels and then I sewn along every line that I marked. I added 18 pieces of boning inside of these channels. Then I added 3 additional boning pieces to the middle. I did this by drawing a rectangle that was big enough for the 3 pieces and sewing this in the middle because this is where I wanted the boning to be. And once this was attached, I made 3 additional boning channels and I shoved them inside. And then I added 2 more boning channels to the side to give this some extra support as well. And for those of you who love to count, that's a total of 23 pieces of boning.
Bone!
You might notice that I'm using duct tape to connect the pieces. The pieces that I had left were a little bit too small, and I'm on a budget with this dress, so this was my cheap and easy solution. And here you have it. After 5 mock-ups, 2 weeks of frustration, I finally made a lining piece that I loved. Now it's time to add some color. I first dyed 2 pieces of the gray fabric. If you have seen my video about the skirt, you already know this, but I created the color by dyeing one of the layers forest green and the other one royal blue. So I will have to redo this for the top. After the dyeing, I used the same pattern that I made for the lining fabric to cut 9 green pieces. And then I also added fusible inner facing to make it a bit more solid. Then I sewn these 9 pieces into 3 pieces. My skirt is not green, it's bluish, so I'm not done yet. I added 2 additional pieces of fabric over every piece of the top, the royal blue one, and then finally the baby blue top layer. The outer layers of my top will exist out of 3 pieces, 2 side pieces and 1 middle piece, so I made sure to do this for all of the pieces, and then I connected them into my outer layer. Then I attached the colorful outside piece to the gray piece with the boning inside. I first attached the bottom and then I realized that the boning was a little bit too large. So I took it down a notch and then I was able to connect the pieces together. Once I had both of the pieces attached, I was looking for a way to finish this. This is where my top differs from the OG. I decided to finish it with a bias tape. I made my own bias tape with double fusible inner facing. This kind of functions like a glue. So I basically glued the 3 colors that I use for this dress together. And then I folded this into base tape with my best friend, the ironer. Notice that the base tape that I'm going to use for the side already has holes in it. This is because this is my second try for the top, but it was just too much to put it all in one video. But I'm thinking about making a really long video where I will go over all of the mistakes and all of the things that I had to redo in this dress. I reattached the base tape. Somebody please tell me, is it bias tape or a base tape? And I also reinstated the eyelets, and then I finished up the whole top, and ta-da-da-da-da, the top is finished. Now it's time to make the fluffy puffy Berta.
He's so fluffy, I'm gonna die!
I don't know if you all remember my lovely lady Brenda. She's a beautiful lady, but unfortunately she has no arms. And to make the Berta, I at least needed her to have some shoulders. So I provided her with these 2 beautiful pink shoulders. Next, I cut 2 straps out of a very flexible fabric. These will function as elastics. Next, I attached these 2 elastics over the shoulders. This will help with the overall fit of the Berta, especially when you move your arms. Then I created a quick mock-up for the Berta. So I cut 2 oval shapes out of a piece of leftover fabric. And then I fitted it and I liked it. So I used this to make the pattern out of a piece of carton. Now I'm going to use this pattern to create the Berta. My Berta will consist out of 4 layers. The 3 layers that I used for the skirt, so the baby blue top layer, the royal blue layer, and the forest green layer. But I will also add a layer of the iridescent fabric. The iridescent fabric is a fabric that makes everything so shiny. To start, I cut the pattern 2 times out of every layer that I just mentioned, and then I sewn them together. This way I had 2 ovals consisting out of 4 layers, and I attached those together to create the Berta. To make it easier for myself, I created a strap. I'm going to turn this strap into a loop, and I'm going to attach this to the front of my top. And then I can add the Berta through this. This will make it easier for me to sew the rest of the Berta. I attached a part of the under edge of the Berta to the top. I finished up the edge of the Berta, I gathered it and I attached this to the end of the top. Now, if you're clearly awake while watching this video, you realize that the Berta just got bigger. It's not because I have a magic wand, it's because I found it a little bit too small. So I made a second Berta and I attached it. So the Berta consists out of 4 of these oval pieces now. To finish the Berta, I did some hand sewing, what I don't do very often, and I attached it in some places to the top and also to my elastic waistband. This took long. This took me like over an hour to get a shape that I liked. But I eventually got a Berta that made me happy. This is me in the dress. It's almost finished, so that means that it's time for the butterflies. I'm going to make these from the leftover pieces of fabric. Most of these are organza-like fabrics, so I added some fusible interfacing to the organza and I cut it out. Then I printed a cute little butterfly and I drew this on the fabric and then I cut it out. I flattened the butterflies with my ironer and now it's time to give them some design. I strayed a bit from the original dress here, but I feel like it should have something of my personal design. I made 2 designs for the butterflies, a very simple one and one with a few lines over the wings. Before I attached them, I also added an additional layer of the fusible interfacing to make them a bit more solid. And then I realized that they were a little bit too big and a little bit too dominant on the Berta. So I cut them 1 centimeter or half an inch smaller. Then I also had to redo some of my design. Then it was time to attach them all over the Berta. This was one of my favorite parts of making the dress. I attached them with super glue. I enjoyed myself decorating my Berta with these butterflies. It was even more fun than decorating a Christmas tree. I did something that I should have done at the end of the video of the skirt, and that is adding 200 rhinestones to it. Adding the butterflies was one of my favorite things to do. This was one of my least favorite things to do, so that's why I postponed it. Weird. Some people might argue that making a dress like this and shooting it in public is already weird.
Sweetie, you are weird.
But I glued a lot of boning to the back of the top. This makes it look a bit more snapped. And I also glued it with super glue. And to this day, it's still alive. So cheers for super glue. And I cannot believe that it's finally time to say this. After 7 months of sewing, I started this project in March. The dress is finally finished. Here is some footage of me elegantly standing up in the dress. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!